Hello, I'm reading a copy of Self-Realization Fellowship Lessons that I downloaded from angelfire.com. I'm starting at S1P1, the top of page 3. Physical perfection through willpower. SRF instructions combine the basic laws of physical well-being utilized by the ancient Hindu yogis and discoveries of modern physiological science. Some Western athletes have learned to control certain muscles by will, but have failed to see the scientific principles underlying such control. The yogis of India have a large number of postures that they practice in order to strengthen and develop their willpower. The will can be utilized to develop the body, and the will itself is developed in the process by the very exercising of it. Physical and mental development are intertwined and help each other. The SRF technique of recharging the body by will is distinctive in that it teaches one how to concentrate his attention upon the inner energy, direct giver of strength and vitality to all the tissues of the body. The faithful student will find that practice of the technique invariably and consciously develops his willpower along with his bodily strength. Evolution of willpower. The evolution of this great force should be thoughtfully studied. The newborn baby's first cry announced the birth of willpower. The baby cries because it wants to remove the feeling of discomfort owing to the first painful opening and activity of the lungs. This is called automatic physiological will. When the baby grows old enough to talk and unquestioningly follows the wishes of its mother, it is said to possess unthinking will. The mother calls the infant a good boy because he obeys her. Then the baby grows older and begins to think for himself, and the mother denies something that the baby thinks he should have. He begins to manifest obstinacy by offering resistance. The mother may become angry and call her child naughty, but in the first act of obstinacy, the baby is only using the next phase of evolving will, blind will. Blind will at this stage is termed blind because it is not usually guided by wisdom. Most young people use this explosive blind will without any worthwhile purpose, wasting energy and higher possibilities on passions, temptations, brawls, fast driving, rash resolutions, ungoverned appetites, and so forth. In the East, we give the following illustration of the folly of letting the senses go ungoverned. The bee, for love of fragrance, settles in the lotus flower. The petals entomb it if the bee forgets to get out before they close. The fish loves the taste of water. It dies when taken out of it. The moose loves music and is lured to its death by the flute of the hunter. The wild male elephant loves the sense of touch and is lured by the tame she-elephant to captivity. Behavior true in human beings too. The insect loves the sight of light and perishes trying to enjoy the white loveliness of the candle flame. So each of these creatures dies because it is addicted to a single sense. But man is attached to all five senses, and he must watch his step if he would save himself from his blind will, which urges him to jump into the yawning crevices of the five sense lures. Thinking will. Realizing the futility of blind will, after experiencing its results, the youth learns what is meant by thinking will. Even thinking will, however, is not an end in itself, for unless it is guided by discrimination, it becomes semi-paralyzed by wrong activities. But if one's thinking will retains its normal power and is made to revolve around a definite purpose, it becomes a dynamic volition. When such volition is used for wholesome purposes, actions in tune with the universal harmony are good. The will is strengthened and leads to success. A wrongly used will weakens itself owing to lack of encouragement from truth, as it is out of tune with the universal order. When one knows that his objective or the nature of his purpose is worthwhile, then the tenacity of his volition becomes greater. The man of volition says, I will use my dynamic power of volition to fight for the truth until success comes. If death intervenes, I shall take up my activity with renewed determination in another incarnation until I have fulfilled my good purpose. A will, a way. A strong will, by its own dynamic force, creates a way for fulfillment of its intention. By its very strength, the will sets in motion certain vibrations in the atmosphere and nature, with its law of order, system, and efficiency. Thereupon responds by creating favorable circumstances. Will derives its greatest strength from an honest purpose, lofty motives, and a noble solicitude for doing good to the world at large. A strong will is never stifled. It always finds a way. God's will and your will. God did not make us inert automatons, but instruments of His will, endowed with free choice to use that power as we please. God's will is not guided by whim or temptation. His will is guided by wisdom. God made us His children in His image that we might guide our will with wisdom, even as He does. To teach people not to use their will is not only a ridiculous denial of the Divine Father's wish, indeed it is an impossibility, since the will is involved in even the slightest movement of the muscles or in thinking. Not temptation, but God. All human craving and desire should be transmuted and turned towards God, instead of being allowed to delude the sole image of God in man. Temptation is a delusive, compelling, conflicting, joy-expecting thought which should be used to pursue happiness-making truth and not misery-producing error. Although God is the creator of consciousness, the vitiated consciousness of man turns away from Him and tries to lure the soul to concentrate upon temporary pleasures of the senses. Contact God first when you want to accomplish something important. Will and act after you have first contacted God. By contacting God first, you harness your will and activity to the right goal. As you cannot broadcast through a broken microphone, you must remember that you cannot broadcast your prayers through a mental microphone that is disordered by restlessness. Repair your mind microphone by practicing deep calmness. Then give God a real soul call. Do not give up after only 1 or 2 broadcasts if He does not seem to respond. You cannot get an answer by just calling someone and then running away. Similarly, it is ineffective to pray once and then let the attention run away. Continuously broadcast your prayer to God through your calm mental microphone until you hear His answering voice. Most people pray in restlessness and without the determination to receive a response. In tune or out of tune. If one uses his will ignorantly, it produces wrong or evil actions. But one guides his will through wisdom. With wisdom, his actions bring about good, for they are in tune with divine will, and divine will is guided by wisdom. Wisdom-guided, self-initiated human will and human will guided by God's wisdom-guided will are one and the same thing. Thy will be done. Jesus found his will so completely guided by wisdom that he could say to a dead man, "Lazarus, come forth," and bring him to life, or, "O my Father, thy will be done," and with full knowledge submit to the betrayal that led to his crucifixion. That's Matthew 26:42. Many people misinterpret the real meaning of thy will be done, and preach a dangerous doctrine of not using the will. Many others are physically lazy, and most people are mentally lazy. They are unwilling even to initiate creative thinking or self-emancipating thinking lest they succeed. Divine will has no boundaries. The Savior of man is a constantly progressive dynamic will. The only Savior of man is a constantly progressive dynamic will. Human will, however powerful, is still limited by the circumference of the body and the boundaries of the physical universe. Man's will can initiate successful activities in the body or on earth, or in finding out the mysteries of different stars. But divine will has no boundaries. It works in all bodies and all things. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God's will is working in everything. When by deep meditation or by wisdom-guided, unflinching, never discouraged determination we can successfully keep our volition revolving around all our noble desires, then our will becomes one with divine will. Man's will ordinarily works within the boundaries of his own little circle of family, environment, world conditions, destiny, and prenatal and postnatal cause and effect governed actions. But divine, dynamic volition can change destiny, wake the dead, move mountains into the sea, and divert the course of planets. Thoughts to live by. For absolute control of your life and for destroying prenatal and postnatal root causes of failure, you must exercise your will in every undertaking, until it shakes off its mortal delusion of being human will and becomes all-powerful divine will. You do not need to acquire this dynamic divine will. You already possess it in the image of God within you. Two frogs in trouble. Once a big fat frog and a lively little frog were hopping along together when they had the misfortune to jump straight into a pail of fresh milk. They swam for hours and hours, hoping to get out somehow, but the sides of the pail were steep and slippery and death seemed certain. When the big frog was exhausted, he lost courage. There seemed no hope of rescue. "Why keep struggling against the inevitable? I can't swim any longer," he moaned. Keep on," urged the little frog, who was still circling the pail. So they went on for a while, but the big frog decided it was no use. "Little brother, we may as well give up," he gasped. "I'm going to quit struggling." Now only the little frog was left. He thought to himself, "Well, to give up is to be dead, so I will keep on swimming." 2 more hours passed, and the tiny legs of the determined little frog were almost paralyzed with exhaustion. It seemed as if he could not keep moving another minute. But then he thought of his dead friend and repeated, "To give up is to be meat for someone's table, so I will keep on paddling until I die. If death is to come, but I will not cease trying. While there is life, there is hope." Intoxicated with determination, the little frog kept on, around and around and around the pail, chopping the milk into white waves. After a while, just as he felt completely numb and thought he was about to drown, he suddenly felt something solid under him. To his astonishment, he saw that he was resting on a lump of butter which he had churned by his incessant paddling. And so the successful little frog leapt out of the milk pail to freedom. Affirmation. I shall tune my free will with the infinite will of God, and my only desire shall be to do the wisdom-guided will of Him who created me. Self-Realization Fellowship Lesson S1 P3. The self-realization will blossom forth from my soulful study. O Spirit, I worship Thee in all shrines, by Paramahansa Yogananda. Into the temple of peace come Thou, O Lord of joy. Enter my shrine of meditation, O bliss God. Sanctify me with Thy presence. Eternal Allah, hover over the lone minaret of my holy aspiration. The mosque of my mind exudes a frankincense of stillness. On the altar of my inner vihara I place flowers of desirelessness. Their chaste beauty is Thine, O Spirit. In a tabernacle not made with hands, I bow before the sacred ark and vow to keep thy commandments. Heavenly Father, in an invisible church built of devotion granite, receive thou my humble art offerings, daily renewed by prayer. That is from Whispers from Eternity. Prayer. Heavenly Father, in thy universal temple of silence, we are singing unto thee a chorus of many-voiced religions. Teach us to bow to thee, manifesting in all churches and temples erected in thine honor. What is the best religion? Most people who follow a variety of teachings stick to none. Their choices are usually influenced by curiosity and imitation rather than by any logical reason or necessity. Such students like to listen perpetually to new ideas from new personalities without ever making a personal effort to assimilate the ideas. They may be compared to one who sets out to reach a certain destination but becomes so enamored with walking that he wanders here and there, forgetting all about his goal. Some students are led by curiosity to adopt a particular spiritual path, hoping to reach the destination of truth and wisdom, but they often become sidetracked by their insatiable curiosity. As they keep trying new things for the thrill of change, they never reach their goal. These people are interested in listening to spiritual truths, but are not in making the effort to apply those truths in actual life and realize them through experience within the self. Superficial seekers fail to get anywhere because they do not separate the kernel of truth from the chaff of untested beliefs. They imagine they understand the truth of different teachings without even ever trying to feel the joyous experience that comes through self-realization of truth. Real students are satisfied only when they can realize truth within themselves as a direct personal experience. The difference between curiosity seekers and real seekers is that the former always seek new imaginary satisfactions or thrills from their studies. This seeming thirst for knowledge is an indication, more often than not, that such persons are actually satisfied with mere theories. Real seekers test and compare what they find applicable until they find applicable truths that increase their realization. Changeable enthusiasts. What is the best way to find a true, parentheses, and hence soul-satisfying religion? Let us draw our conclusions from the following illustration. A dietitian eloquently expounds the wonderful results of a particular system of diet When a dietitian eloquently expounds the wonderful results a particular system of diet will produce, Mr. John, parentheses, who represents the average enthusiastic but changeable faddist, parentheses, is inclined to be very much impressed. But if Mr. John continually puts off trying that system of diet, he naturally loses interest in it as soon as the lecture series is over. But later on, when the dietitian visits town, Mr. John is eager to listen to him because he remembers the sense of enthusiasm and imaginary stimulation he felt while listening to the previous lecture about a system of dietetics. The chances are that once the second dietitian leaves town, Mr. John will not try his system of diet either. Or perhaps Mr. John tries it for a little while and then falls back to his whole habit of eating ham sandwiches made with white bread instead of cheese or egg sandwiches made with whole wheat bread, as might have been suggested by the dietitian. Mr. John, being impelled by the theoretical desires to live right, thus develops the habit of listening to all the new dietitians who come to town but without ever following any of their instructions. Mr. John also develops the habit of going only to dietitians whose names or teachings are new to him, no matter what their value. He, of course, thinks that he is smart and that he has outgrown the best principles of dietetics prescribed by the first dietitian. even though such principles may have been better than the ones that have more recently aroused his enthusiasm. He imagines he knows a great deal about the various systems of dietics just because he has listened to various disconnected lectures on the subject. So long as listening to new principles of dietics produce the desire and necessary action to work them out, so long as listening to new principles of dietics produce the desire and the necessary action to work them out in daily life, so long as it good for a person to listen to such lecturers. But every Mr. John should remember he cannot follow all the systems of diet at the same time, and that he should not discard a good system for a lesser system of food science just because the latter happens to be new to him. Seek, then choose the best. The foregoing principles also apply to religion. Some students who have only theoretically tried different teachings are still seeking instead of applying in their lives the best teachings they have found. They believe that they know all the principles just because they have heard them once or because they put into practice a few of the principles for a little while. Such persons may be classed as curiosity seekers, and so long as they maintain this shallow approach, they will never taste the bliss of self-realization. Accepting the shadow for the substance, they are like persons who are satisfied merely by listening to descriptions of orange blossom honey given by different producers of the product without ever tasting the honey itself. Some people want to swallow every variety of food that is at hand without giving the body a chance to assimilate any of it. This does not revitalize the system, it merely produces indigestion. Likewise, there are scriptural students who love to swallow good ideas without making them a part of their lives. Naturally, they suffer from theoretical indigestion. One who has nothing to eat must seek anything at hand in order to satisfy his hunger, but when one has access to various kinds of food, he should discriminate as to what is the best kind of food. Also, if you are spiritually hungry and you do not find the right teacher, one who has attained self-realization through true spiritual experience, then you are justified in the beginning in trying to know truth through select books and lectures. But when you have experienced a little awakening, you will become increasingly hungry. At the same time, you will find that your sources of spiritual food have multiplied. Then you should select carefully from among the many teachings that system best adapted to your needs and stick to it. Remember, if you are anxious to get to New York from Los Angeles, you cannot spend a lifetime trying out different kinds of conveyances such as bullock carts, horses and carriage, ships, automobiles, slow or fast airplanes, and in investigating the different long and short routes. You select the shortest route and pick the safest and fastest conveyance available and use them to reach your destination. Is any business more urgent than that of reaching through self-realization the source of all life? Then forsake habit-imposed theological beliefs that have proven to be blind alleys leading nowhere. You cannot ride in the fast airplane of self-realization and in the old theological bullock cart at the same time, any more than you could follow two contradictory dogmatic theological routes at the same time. The best way lies in selecting the shortest route, the best technique of meditation. If you deeply, joyously, and continuously practice the techniques contained in these lessons without deviating from those methods of practice, you will be taking the fastest airplane to God. Many seekers fail to find truth because they lose themselves in the forest of theology, moving from one thicket of theory to another until they feel utterly bewildered. Prove that you are a true seeker by determining now, from the very beginning, that you will give careful and practical attention to the techniques and principles you have judiciously selected, and that with the help of your chosen teacher or guru, you will keep on learning and practicing until you are able to see the results in yourself. The guru's help is important, for while you may find true religious principles expressed in good books, you can never realize their full meaning until you see them manifested in the life of an enlightened teacher. Such a guru can help you when you are attuned to him, even though you are not in his presence. Now you are just starting on your journey towards the goal of self-realization. Persevere, and you feel a growing satisfaction and ever-increasing peace, wisdom, and assurance from within. You will begin to realize the best religion consists in your continuously progressing perception of your constantly growing inner happiness felt in meditation. Thoughts to remember. Have you found truth? True religion lies in conscious communion with God. The practice of religion should give you the joy of feeling God consciousness. Concentrate on experiencing God's love, not on miraculous visions or demonstrations. Merge your consciousness into God consciousness. Once you have found God, He will tell you all that you need to know. The secret of true religion lies in the cave of stillness, in the cave of wisdom, in the cave of the spiritual eye. By concentration on the point between the eyebrows and by delving into the depths of silence, one can find answers to all the religious queries of the heart. Affirmation. I worship the one God honored on the altars of all religious faiths. Self-Realization Fellowship Lesson S1P3A. How to Meditate. Basic instructions with an exercise in visualization. Introduction. Meditation is the science of reuniting the soul with spirit. The soul, descended from God into flesh, manifests its consciousness and life force through 7 chakras, or centers of light, in man's cerebrospinal axis. These are the 7 stars, or 7 churches, spoken of by St. John in the little understand book of Revelation in the Bible. Encased in the bodily prison, the soul, consciousness, and life force become identified with the physical vehicle and its mortal limitations. Scientific meditation awakens the soul consciousness in the 7 cerebrospinal centers. In the state of divine recollectedness, the soul intuitively realizes its immortal nature and origin. The various progressive states of soul awakening are accompanied by an ever-increasing ascension of inner peace and joy. In the most exalted states, soul and spirit become reunited in ecstatic, blissful communion, or samadhi. By meditation, then, we connect the little joy of the soul with the vast joy of the spirit. Meditation should not be confused with ordinary concentration. Concentration consists of freeing the attention from distractions and on focusing it on any thought in which one may be interested. Meditation is that special form of concentration in which the attention has been liberated from restlessness and is focused on God. Meditation is concentration used to know God. Posture. One of the first requisites for meditation is correct posture. The spine should be erect. When the devotee is seeking to direct his mind and life force upward through the cerebral spinal axis to the centers of higher consciousness in the brain, he should avoid stricture or pinching of the spinal nerves caused by improper posture. Those persons whose legs are supple may prefer to meditate sitting cross-legged on a cushion on the floor or on a firm bed. However, Paramahansa recommended for most Westerners the following meditation pose. Sit on a straight armless chair with the feet resting flat on the floor. Hold spine erect, abdomen in, chest out, shoulders back, chin parallel to the ground. The hands, with the palms upturned, should rest on the legs at the juncture of the thighs and the abdominal region to prevent the body from bending forward. The meditation chair should be of a comfortable height, otherwise there is a tendency to allow the torso to lean forward or backward. If the correct posture has been assumed, the body will be stable yet relaxed, and so that it is easily possible to remain completely still without moving a muscle. Okay, that's the end of the first paragraph on chapter 2, S1P3A. Thanks for listening. Bye.